Hola, hola, and welcome to the Speaker Movement podcast. I am your host, Steph Wharton, a public speaker and coach for creatives who are looking to enter their speaker era in order to grow their brand and amplify their impact in sustainable ways. We do not give presentations the credit that they deserve. I see so many folks using presentations, a slide deck, like on PowerPoint, Canva, wherever, as a tool to communicate your session, right? And it is a great tool, especially when it comes to teaching something and capturing people's attention. Because in your audience, whoever it is that you're presenting in front of, they're going to have different learning styles. They're either going to prefer learning like orally, so auditorily. They're going to prefer to read something. They're going to need images. They're going to need to touch and feel and experience and actually do something. And based on those different learning styles, a lot of the times a presentation, especially if it's very intentionally curated, can help a lot of the folks in your audience stay hooked on what it is that you're saying and actually absorb the knowledge so that they can go ahead and implement it after the fact. As opposed to just thinking, wow, that was a really cool session, but I forgot half of what just happened. And I guess I'm just going to feel inspired, but again, not take action, not implement, and not experience any results based on what I just heard. Now, whenever I speak at specifically summits, the hosts do a really good job of giving you some tips in terms of what to include and how to structure your presentation if you're going to be using one. But what I find is that a lot of that advice and that guidance tends to be very similar. And it usually flows in a way where you start off with an introduction to the topic, to yourself, making sure that everybody knows that they're in the right room, the right session, and they're excited to learn or to have whatever experience you're ready to deliver. And then it dives into common mistakes or common myths about your industry or your topic. Then we go into the teaching moment. Then we've got a bit of like a summary or like a next step, like what can people actually take action on based on everything that you've shared so far. And depending on the type of event, then there's an opportunity for you to invite folks to take action in some way when it comes to connecting with you. Sometimes that means sharing a freebie of sorts that connects your presentation to the rest of your brand. And that's awesome. There's a reason why the advice is structured that way. It does work. And I've even implemented it myself and led a lot of different sessions, a little different talks using that structure. But what I find is not only can it be a little bit boring or dull, if literally you're attending an event with multiple speakers and everybody follows the exact same structure, it's like, okay, you don't gotta like dive into this again. But then it's also hard to be remembered because of it. It's just the same old, boring, perhaps useful, but still a little bit outdated strategy. What I love to do is, even if I am following loosely the overall structure that folks are recommending, is I like to get creative with it in some way, shape, or form. There's this one specific example that always comes to mind because I'd never seen it done before. From the feedback that I received, nobody else had seen it done before. And the way that I structured my presentation actually led to folks reaching out, not just to share like what they loved about it, but specifically to book me to speak at another event. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you liked listening to me speak that much and you thought my presentation was that cool, innovative, whatever, that you now want to trust me with your community and your event. Absolutely. Like nailed it. That's exactly what I was striving for. It wasn't just about me sharing knowledge and providing a good experience from that sense, but it's really adding to the event so that the host can be proud and then attendees can walk away being like, wow, that was like really different, really cool. And like, now I learned a lot. I'm going to go ahead and implement it, right? Just because of little tweaks. To actually share with you what it is that I did for this specific event and presentation is I went ahead and structured it in a way where towards the beginning part of the presentation, I introduced the fact that not only am I a public speaker and this is what I do in my business, but I introduced the fact that I had a podcast. So I plugged my podcast very casually, organically. It wasn't like, oh my God, you got to subscribe, you got to follow this right now. It's like, no, this is just part of my brand, it's part of what I do. And I also introduced a concept that I was going to run with through the entire presentation. What that concept was is that the presentation itself was only roughly 30 minutes long. And I am obsessed with this topic, so I can talk about this for hours, if not days. Like we could work together one-on-one for 6, 12 months, and there would still be so much to talk about. So what I was doing, instead of making them fall asleep for 2 hours, 3 hours, because that's not what they signed up for. That's not what they wanted in that moment, is I'm going to keep it short. We're going to dive deep in certain areas, but there's going to be certain areas that there's so much more that I want to share with you. And I know it's going to make such a difference for you, that what I'm going to do is reference different episodes from my podcast where I take this specific side tangent a step further, so you can learn a lot more but still get the meat, like what you really showed up for today, from this 30-minute session. So then throughout the presentation, every time that I had something that I'm like, oh, I wish I could take it like another step deeper, I actually just referenced. I'm like, go to episode 15, to episode 80, episode 34, whatever the episodes were. And that encouraged folks to go ahead, subscribe to the podcast, tune in, listen to me speak for another 30 minutes, another hour, for the next weeks on repeat, and learn so much more, build so much trust, that then that could lead to even more opportunities. At a minimum, lead to folks who are now invested and interested in my podcast and my content. And then at the end of the presentation, instead of one of those traditional lead magnets where I'm sharing like a PDF or another masterclass or whatever other resources and freebies people are building these days, I went, hey, you know how we just did all that? This is a podcast again. Go subscribe, leave a comment, and reach out if you have any other questions on any of these episodes. And that was it. There's no lead magnet, no opt-in. People didn't have to give me their email. It's a little bit harder to track. But what I was able to track, other than the fact that, hey, fingers crossed, lots of people listen to my podcast, is that I got speaking specifically because I structured my presentation in that way. So let this be your reminder, invitation, permission slip, if you need it, to get creative with your presentations, with your slide decks. Yes, some event hosts are going to give you guidelines on like best practices or just some advice, especially if you're a speaker who hasn't felt like they have the knowledge or expertise to create a strong presentation. That's awesome. Those resources are great, but get creative with it. Follow your intuition. If there's something fun, something different that you want to do, go ahead and bake it into your presentation, because it's going to leave such a much like long-lasting impression on the audience and the event host, even the other speakers, that is going to lead to even more opportunities. It's about making a bigger impression. It's about lasting impact. It's about actually making the entire speaking experience more you. So instead of trying to fit yourself into a box and trying to do and run presentations and sessions the way that everybody else does, just because it's proven and successful and it just works really well, okay, well, maybe it works really well for them. But what if there's either a hybrid option or an entirely different option that works even better for you? That is leadership at its finest. And that's how you get to become innovative and creative as a public speaker in order to, book more opportunities, but honestly, to just have more fun with it.